So good evening, everyone. This is the July 12th meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. Welcome. And our first agenda item is roll call. Pastor Spriggs?
Yes.
Could you call roll, please?
Yes. Susan Young Flesh. Oh, I'm sorry. She's no longer with us. Okay. Eileen Delaney.
I'm here.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr. I am here. Dr. R. Lee Brown. Dr. R. Lee Brown. Okay. Nadia Keen Ayub.
Present.
Thank you. Bonnie King.
Here. I saw Bonnie. There she is.
Okay, gotcha. Marianne Pintar.
Present.
Okay. Tim Ware. Okay. G.I. Wilson.
Present.
Okay. Is Ariana Federico with us tonight?
She's out of the country until next month.
All right. That concludes.
And do we have a quorum? Mr. Parker?
We do have a quorum, and before we get started with public comment, yes, we do have a quorum. Valerie, can you please make me a co-host so that I can call the attendees over for public comment? Sorry about that, Chair Delaney.
Yes, let me go ahead and do that.
And Pastor Spriggs, Ms. Youngflesh is a board member. She just will not be here tonight.
Madam Chair, Tim Ware will be a little late, but he'll be here.
Thank you. I was talking, just realized I was muted again.
Okay.
Are we ready?
No, Chair Delaney, we're not.
Oh,
I'm still not.
you are
I'm
now
still
the-
not. Oh, now I am.
Yeah, you are. It says you're the host
Perfect.
now.
Now
Okay, great.
I am ready for you. Yes.
Okay, agenda item number 2 is public comments. And this is the opportunity of members of the public to address the board on any subject matter within our jurisdiction, but not an item on today's open session. Each speaker will complete an online, and you have 2 to 3 minutes. And I would just like to clarify that if there is an agenda item that you would like to speak in regards to, hold your comments until at that time. Mr. Parker, could you check and see if there's any public comments?
We have at least 4 requests for public comment, actually 5. I'm going to start with Dr. Tom Packard. Dr. Packard.
Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Dr. Packard, we can. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Tom Packard. I'm a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice North County. The end of a fiscal year is a common time for an organization to review goals and accomplishments of the past year. In the case of CLERB, this would of course include an overall review of all recommendations made and the ultimate outcomes, such as policies and procedures actually put into practice, as well as action taken by the CLERB and the sheriff in response to various reports, such as those on jail deaths and your racial disparity, racial profiling, and implicit bias ad hoc committee. When a sheriff responds to a recommendation says that something will be done or findings will be reviewed, the ultimate outcomes should be assessed. On another level, before my career at SDSU, I was an organization development consultant with the city of San Diego. We often facilitated management teams and others in their assessment of their work, from an annual strategic planning review to a debriefing of a team building session. I think CLERB could benefit from such a process, reflecting upon the previous year with not only a results-oriented annual report, but also member comments about what was planned and what was actually done. Equally important can be discussions about how the group worked together and how you responded to concerns, questions, and suggestions from the community that you're supposed to represent. Also, please address the extent to which you think your work has created any systems change within the sheriff department. I hope you'll allocate time for such a review at an upcoming meeting. You should not only assess what you have done to hold the sheriff accountable, but also how accountable you have been to yourselves and the community regarding your own plans and actions. If you won't do this in an open session, do it in a closed session and share at least general themes with the community. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Packard. And the annual report draft will be on next month, next month's CLERB agenda. So thank you. Next, we will go to Karen Remus.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Good evening, CLERB members. On May 25th, the San Diego Union Tribune reported on the death of a 64-year-old man in San Diego Sheriff Department custody. The story indicated that the man was the 10th person to die in San Diego County custody this year, and went on to cite the CLERB report issued earlier this year, which found that inmates in San Diego County are dying at a rate notably higher than the 12 largest counties in California. On July 2nd, NBC 7 San Diego reported on the death of a 40-year-old woman, again occurring while in the custody of the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. A famous quote states, "The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members." By this measure, San Diego is failing horribly. CLERB members, I know you are working to bring much needed reform, and I thank you for your efforts. Please continue and push even harder to keep people in custody safe. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Lori Saldana. Ms. Saldana?
Thank you. Good evening, CLERB members and Executive Director. And I appreciate the comments of the first speaker and bringing forward an accountability model and looking at outcomes of your work. I think that's a very essential element to any oversight board. What are you actually accomplishing in the work that you are donating to our community? I have been out around San Diego to various homelessness encampments over the last few weeks, and I will tell you that the policing and the citations are ramping up as the summer crowds come into San Diego. And I anticipate that the jails will be likewise having a lot more people going into them as a result of this increased enforcement. I want you, if you're not already, I want to encourage you to be aware of not only the increase in COVID infection rates that is happening because of some of the latest variants, but we also have monkeypox, which is transmitted through not only direct contact, but contaminated bedding and clothing, and also the breath and perspiration of people in close connection or close contact with one another. And I am worried, as are many others, that could contribute to increased infections in the jails, as it only takes one person with monkeypox to bring that infection into the county jails. So I am speaking as someone who has seen increasingly sick and weak people being arrested, brought in by police, presumably to be processed and put into the jail population. These people are already in a very poor condition in terms of health outcomes. People who are unsheltered who get COVID are much more likely to require hospitalization and many times more likely to die as a result of the infection. So please be aware that the death count in the jails are already escalating this year. Please be aware that with monkeypox and this latest COVID variant, that health protocols and prevention protocols need to be increased in the jail as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Delaney, we have a few more speakers, but I did want the record to reflect that Dr. Brown is present.
Great. I was going to do that too, so thank you.
You are welcome. Next, we will go to Yusef Miller. Mr. Miller.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
My name is Yusef Miller. I'm with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. And as was said earlier, we're on our 11th in custody death this year. As you all know, we've been dealing with this since 2020 as a campaign, the Saving Lives in Custody campaign, which is now the Saving Lives in Custody Act, and moving through the Senate to try to reform the in custody system to prevent in custody deaths. And we're now on the 11th death for this year. And we are in a crisis. We need everybody's help. We need everybody to be focused on saving these lives in custody, many of them which are preventable. We have the class action suit that's coming up, the hearing, the federal class action suit that's coming up against the county and the sheriff's department. It only gets worse if we don't work together to make sure that we save these lives. These families are suffering. The list keeps growing longer and longer. Please be a part of the solution. and help reform our in-custody system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Natalie Nishat. Are you there, Natalie?
Hi, yes, I just got the option to unmute. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Your time starts now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Natalie Nishat. I'm from zip code 92131. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and your continued work. Recently, I was reading an article, it was actually posted in June from KPBS on the 17th, about the expanded access inmates have to naloxone and the usage instructions as well. The article notes what is also top of mind to CLERB and clearly the community here. San Diego had the highest number of unexpected deaths by a recent report compared to the 12 major counties and jail systems within California. What the article notes is also the impact of naloxone and its impact in saving lives. Sheriff Ray was quoted specifically stating it has saved close to 400 lives since 2020, and the expanded access will improve that. The article also notes that CLERB has been calling for this for a year, the expanded access, I mean. I can only imagine the amount of lives and individuals who could have been saved had the Sheriff's Department listened to CLERB and implemented these recommendations earlier. Sheriff Ray was also quoted saying, "We are trying to make our jails as safe as possible. We don't want to be known as the place where people go and pass away." So with this in mind, recognizing the data-driven improvements that CLERB has provided in its recommendations to the Sheriff's Department and county jails, I urge CLERB to seek its expanded policy abilities beyond recommendation and towards compulsory implementation. As our community members have said here, we are in a crisis. There is no time to waste. So I really urge CLERB to expand its capacity there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
And thank you. Next, we will go real quick, Chair Delaney. Mr. Ware is also present. Let the record reflect that. Next, we will go to Robin Sales. Ms. Sales.
Hi, yes. I'm Robin Sales from Showing Up for Racial Justice North County and the Racial Justice and Equity Justice Coalitions. This is the 17th time I have made comments to the CLERB, since November of 2020. So you're all familiar with me, or most of you are. In the intervening months, community representatives like me have implored the CLERB to strongly recommend changes to benefit incarcerated people so that they can have their day in court. Unfortunately, since that first meeting, many have died in the county jails and 4 major assessments have been undertaken, with many of the recommendations rejected by the Sheriff's Department. I'm glad that Interim Sheriff Ray and Assistant Sheriff Adams Haidar are here tonight to answer the questions from CLERB members. More importantly, the community wants to know why, with the egregious numbers of in-custody deaths, San Diego County jails are not being administered by the Attorney General's office. What is different now in the management of the jails that make them safer for those who would be better served in mental health and drug abuse treatment? CLERB members need to ask tough questions and insist on seeing proof of progress. The Sheriff's Department needs to be more responsive to the CLERB's recommendations, and the DA needs to hold deputies accountable for negligence, aggressive use of force, and for their lack of humanity. Thank you for allowing me to make comments.
Mr. Parker, do we have any more speakers?
At this point, Chair Delaney, I do not have any additional speakers. I have not received any electronically through our request to speak option on our website, and I have not received any via this format with a raised hand. So at this point, Chair Delaney, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is approval of the minutes. Are there any revisions? I do have one. So on most of the items where we voted, yes, I did call for the vote. Someone else made the motion, however. I think Bonnie was noted as making the seconds, and then Paul took roll call for the votes. So if we could revise that, that would be terrific. Does anybody else have any revisions? Ms. Pintar, did you have?
Yes, she actually, just if I don't want to speak for her, however, she did verbalize and we've made the change to the draft minutes. We just didn't send it out, that Ms. Pintar had made comments about how she had toured 6 of the facilities and that it was a beneficial experience and she recommended all board members do so. That was made as a board member comment last month and that will be reflected in those minutes.
Okay, great.
I saw the change made, Eileen. That's why I didn't make any mention.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to know if you wanted to speak to that at all. All right, with that, is there a motion to approve with the revision that I mentioned? Okay, Gia Wilson, do we have a second? Pastor Spriggs? All right, any other discussion? Pastor Spriggs, could you call for the vote, roll call, please?
Okay. Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Dr. R. Lee Brown, Nadia Keen Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Abstain.
G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. That concludes.
Did Dr. Brown vote? I didn't hear his response. Dr. Brown, did you vote?
Dr. Brown, you're on.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm on mute. I'm on mute. I apologize. Thank you
right.
for that. Thank you.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, minutes are approved. Our next is a presentation and training. I'd like to welcome San Diego Sheriff Ray, San Diego Assistant Sheriff Teresa Adams Hyder, and San Diego Chief Probation Officer Tamika Nelson. And we're going to hold public comments and board comments until all 3 have spoken. So Sheriff Ray, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Hello, everybody. Obviously, my name is Tony Ray. I have been your sheriff for about 3 months and have about 6 months to go, or my term will be ending on January 2nd when the new sheriff is sworn in. I haven't had a chance to address you, but my general focus as a sheriff is to provide for public safety, investment in our jails, staffing, and community relations. I think you pretty much sum up the entire department in those 4 areas. Obviously, the investment in our jails is one of our highest priorities right now, but staffing is also one of our highest priorities, as we need to have people so that we can meet all the needs that we have in the area. And I want to say, a plug, we're hiring. And if you know anybody that would like to make a difference in our department from the inside, just have them go to joinstsheriff.net. We would love to talk to them. And I will say quickly that we have 162 or 163 different professional staff jobs, from drivers, nurses, scientists, cooks, accountants, all kinds. And of course, we're also hiring deputy sheriffs in that area. I appreciate the comments that I heard from the public that was coming in. I know several of those folks personally. It was nice to hear you again. I think it should be said, I mean, there's an awful lot of talk about the jail deaths, and that is, no death is acceptable. We don't want anyone to die. Nobody wakes up in the morning wanting that to happen. We train our deputies highly, though, and I would like to say that the number is, since January 1st of 2020, our deputies in the jails have saved 409 lives. That's 409 families that'll get to see their loved one again. That's 409 people that will live to see another day because of the dedication and the motivation of our people dealing with overdose or attempted suicide or whatever it may be. We'll also like to say that there are no successful suicides this year in our jails. There's been a number of attempts, but our deputies have been able to help the people, some of the inmates, and get them the treatment that they need so that they can have another chance at life and move forward. I welcome detailed conversation in terms of which recommendations CLERB has made and which ones we've accepted or not. Be happy to sit down with Paul Parker and give a very detailed brief why and why not that he can bring back to you, the CLERB board, understand why we say yes on some things, why we say partial on some things, why we say no on some things. I think that's fair for the board, and we'd be happy to bring that back to Paul so we can present that to you in the future. And I'm open to questions. If I don't have the answers, certainly we'll research, and I look forward to working with you, CLERB, for the rest of my term. Happy to keep talking. I can talk a lot. Have to keep talking, but I'll let my the other 2 guests say hello first, and then
All right. Assistant Sheriff, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. someday we'll be in person, I hope. So my name
Hope
is,
so.
yes, my name is Teresa Adams Haidar. I was recently promoted to assistant sheriff at the end of February. I was assigned to our detention services bureau after most of my career was in our law enforcement realm. So the DSB, as we call it, Detention Services Bureau, is a new challenge for me. And when I arrived, I was very pleased to see that we have some very quality individuals working in this bureau. We are half the department. So Detention Services Bureau is almost half or more than half the department when it comes to staffing, because we have our 7 jails and our food services, our laundry, our reentry services, our medical service. There's so many little niches within our Detention Services Bureau, not to mention the programs that we facilitate for our incarcerated population. When I started this position and started rolling up my sleeves, getting my hands into the inner workings of DSB, it was obvious that what my goal, and I know working with Sheriff Ray, is we are really, really committed to working on providing the best quality medical, mental health service to our incarcerated population that we absolutely can. And we have already made considerable strides, which we can get to later on during this presentation. That's one of our first goals in reaching accreditation standards, which I think will really serve us well going forward in the future. In addition, one of the other goals that we have set forth that is close to my heart is really fighting this war on drugs, so to speak, to use an old phrase, is specifically our fentanyl and the other dangerous drugs that are making it into our facilities. And it's not something that is unique to San Diego County Sheriff's Department. This is happening in all jails throughout the state. And it's just basically a microcosm of what we're seeing in our communities within San Diego and across the state and within our nation, unfortunately, with the trend in fentanyl and other carfentanyls and opiates. And the other last kind of area that I'm focusing on, and trust me, I'm focusing on a lot more, but is also just the overall wellness of our incarcerated population. So while we're touching on our medical aspect, mental, but just the wellness of the population, which encompasses the medical and mental, but it also is what are the reentry programs that they're getting to get ready to go back out into the real world? What are the MAP programs and the medication and the long-term program to keep the individuals out of jail and to address our recidivism, or know that if they're coming back, what strides have we done to make the time that they come back into custody longer? So successful recidivism is defined in so many ways, but sometimes it's just a matter of, hey, you were out for 2 months or you were out for 2 years. Those are strides, those are positive things. So how we're working with that, with our criminal justice partners with HHSA to make those successful strides in the incarcerated population, which will help us in the long term with many of the other areas that we have. So essentially, in a nutshell, that's kind of the areas I'm focusing on. As the sheriff stated, I'm very eager to work with CLERB, with all of our partners. Transparency is something I'm very good with. I have met with many of our partners, and actually some of the speakers from earlier, I have spoken to them directly, and I'm very comfortable answering questions. So I'm excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And now the Chief Probation Officer, Tamika Nelson. Welcome.
Let me find my unmute button. Thank you. I appreciate the introduction. My name is Tamika Nelson, and I'm the Chief Probation Officer for San Diego County. Just a little bit about myself. I have over 22 years experience in the field of probation. I come via San Joaquin County, but lived here in San Diego County when I was attending school. And at that time, I did not want to leave, but the powers that may be, for lack of a better term, kidnapped me back to San Joaquin County, which means my mother made me come home after college. So, But you know, full circle, I'm happy to be back in the county. I didn't want to leave, and just appreciate the welcome that the county partners, community members have welcomed me back in. And look forward to working not only with CLERB, but our community and our partners that are out there, whether that be government agencies or non-government agencies. Everybody's been very welcoming and just open. As the leader of probation, I just you know, want to emphasize that the mission and the vision that is always a probation, and that's one of balance. And so, with us having more than 1,000 San Diegans working for our department, it's very important that we balance support and accountability. And with that, supporting our partners and supporting our clients, which will return to the community. So, it's not we have to, I guess, the vision is just to maintain that balance. While we do believe that there should be some accountability, we also believe that in order to help successful reentry, you have to support them with those services and help them through those behavior changes. Now, what kind of programs that is, it's a variety of programs, but you want to help them succeed in the community so that they don't have to come back into the system. Very much of a believer that, any one of us could be on either side of that coin. And so that's the approach that we need to take with our clients. And that's one of compassion and one of service. So we take that approach while also balancing public safety in that matter. So just looking forward to working with CLERB and continue the relationships that I've continued to build. I will say to the sheriff, thank you. He was very welcoming to me when I first got here. So thank you to Sheriff Ray, and congratulations to Assistant Sheriff Adams Haidar. So thank you, CLERB, for having me, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. Appreciate all three of you. So now I'm going to ask for public comment. Mr. Parker, can you help me to see if there are any comments from the public?
Sure, Chair Delaney. There are going to be a few, it looks like. It looks like there are two right now. Let's start with Dr. Packard.
Okay.
Yeah, in my career in social work administration, my main interest has been organizational change. And I think, especially with Sheriff Ray coming in, opportunities as a change leader are unique in the sense that you don't have to worry about people getting mad at you and long-term relationships. For Assistant Sheriff Adams Haidar, I'm glad to see you in your new position. My question for both of you is what you can do about systems level change. A lot of what we've seen CLERB doing and what the sheriff's reactions have been are very situational, just like reaction to an individual situation, really often saying the sheriff's staff didn't do anything wrong. And I'd be eager to see what either of you think you can do as change leaders to begin to do systems level change. I know there are huge culture change issues there, but anything you can say about what you think you can do would be appreciated.
I'll start off with that if that's okay. Teresa? Thank you, Dr. Packard. Hey, I real quickly, I'd like to say that I left out of my earlier part. I would like to invite all of you board members, if you haven't toured our facilities, please come down and take a look and let us show you how we operate, what we're doing from the inside, so you can report back to the people. Moving back to Dr. Packard's question. So there's what short-term, long-term. I think you're talking that when you say system change, I would equate that into a long-term change. How can we change a method of operandi, a protocol, a process might be a thing, but the way we go about doing business would be different. Like for me, I demand that everybody that works for me treats people with dignity, respect, and compassion. In fact, compassion is so important to us. We made it one of our core values this year, because we want our people to not forget the humanitarian part of what's going on. I think we can make systemic changes in terms of how we operate and why we operate, but it takes education. It takes a lot of conversation, a lot of communication, and a lot of direction, and then of course leadership and constant discussion about what it is we're trying to do. We have an organization of over 4,000 people. Actually, we're authorized 4,700 people. We have about 4,200 people right now with the vacancies that we're carrying and staffing at different levels. And I can make a statement, I can make a policy change, I can send out an email and then say, I've made a change, but does that institutionalize, does change happen institutionally that way? No, Change happens, and you're an organizational change expert. There's a lot of communication, a lot of massaging. You have to get all the leadership team on board and then drive the message down through the troops while working at the very bottom level so they understand what they're doing so they can rise the message coming out through the time. I think in terms of our approach, Assistant Sheriff Adams has already changed the way that leadership is in our detention bureau right now. And with Under Sheriff Martinez, when she came in, I think it was February of last year, she also made organizational change in terms of how the Detentions Bureau operates so that it's different now than it was 5 years ago. In terms of the department, I think I have a limited time, but I can put things in place. I think I've already made some changes in terms of attitude, morale, and what we're trying to focus on in terms of things. But there are many, many short terms, and then there are long terms. Some change might take 5 years. I know that you may not be aware of this, but in 1999, Sheriff Colander, when we're talking about organizational change, decided he wanted to change our mission, vision, and values and change the entire direction of the department. He hired an expert. We did something called the customer service quality improvement process. And we put every single employee in our department, every single person that we had, it took 18 months to a 16-hour class on mission, vision, value, purpose, discussion, conversation with the leaders to let them know what's going on. And it took about 10 years for that to from the start till it became institutional what was going on. I'll tell you that about 3 years ago, we wanted to end cursing in our operations because we had a number of deputies that were cursing. And it was poor. It didn't present what we wanted to do. And I think we were going to lose some cases because of what some of our deputies were saying. It took us less than a week to change that, but it took a message from the sheriff and then the command staff visiting every single facility we had and talking to every employee we had, explaining what's acceptable, what's not, and what they're going to do. So there was an example of a 10-year change, an example of a 5-year change. I think there's things that we can do attitudinally. There's certainly policies that we can change and put in place to go forward as they're proper. And be happy, as I said to you before, sir, I would love to sit down and talk about organizational change with you on successes, failures, and how to do things better and wins and losses in that area. Teresa, anything to add?
Sure. Thank you, Sheriff. So from my perspective, in terms of systemic changes, I'm looking at it obviously from the direction that Sheriff Ray is going, but also I'm looking at it a little more operationally. So from my viewpoint coming into DSB, for years and I think this group is very savvy on things like Title 15 and BSCC mandates and all the AB 109 and the 54s and the 64s and all the propositions that have come our way. And it has essentially kind of created this, what I call a check the box sort of environment. And I think that check the box environment saw its way into the detention setting, where if you're checking boxes and you're doing the things you need to do, everything is going to be a-okay because I'm checking the box of this mandate, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that goes to what Dr. I'm sorry, is it Packard is saying, that not holding people accountable. Well, when they're checking the boxes of what you're supposed to do and how we've been trained, there is an issue of, well, they didn't do anything wrong. But I think what we're trying to bring systemic changes forward is, addition to the checking the boxes, we have to have a more holistic approach to our incarcerated population. We have to look at the population, and while we've given them this and we've given them that and we've checked the boxes, are we actually looking at the individual? Are we making sure that they have been eating? Are we making sure that they are of the right mindset? Are they answering questions in the way they should answer them? And do they need a little bit more counseling or some sort of class? Or it's looking at them rather than checking the box. And that is what we have been pushing into our detentions environment right now. Part of that, we've started doing what we call wellness checks, which is something that's not mandated, but we have a team that goes around, and it's a mental health clinician, a nurse, a sheriff's deputy, someone from reentry, and we are actually going and basically, and I use the analogy with my younger deputies, but it fell flat because they didn't understand knock, 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 Avon calling. And I realized they didn't have a clue what I was saying, but basically we're knocking on doors and checking on them in their cells. We're looking at their hygiene. We're looking, have they showered lately? Is their cell a mess? Is there trash that's piling up? Are there indications that they need just a little bit more attention? And so that's what we've been doing internally within our facilities for the last 2 months. It's a new program. We call it wellness checks. We're getting it indoctrinated into our everyday protocols or green sheets, as we call them. I think you guys are familiar with that. And so that's kind of the inner systemic changes that we're working on right now. Outer, because not only does it take change internally, but there needs to be some change and impetus for change on the outside. And what I've seen is, and I'll use the best analogy, is many of you have gone or have been provided the opportunity to maybe do what we call the FATS machine, when you have citizens academies and you can go and you pretend you have a gun and you're going to shoot and the screen comes up and it's a shoot not shoot scenario. A lot of people have done that, and we provide that opportunity for law enforcement. So a citizen can come in and say, oh my gosh, I shot that guy, I shouldn't have shot that guy, it was a cell phone. And so they're in that position of a deputy sheriff, and they have completely realized, oh my gosh, it's not what I thought it was. It's not TV. It's not what I'm seeing on the movies. We need to be able to provide that same sort of environment for our detentions bureau, for our citizens and for the community to understand what a day in the life of an incarcerated person is, and what a day in the life of a jail deputy is, how those two overcross each other, and how they're working together and making things work to make it a safe and humane environment for the incarcerated person, as well as a good place to work for the deputy sheriff. And so we have to educate the community to let them know expectations on certain things that we need to provide. There are basic things we should and we need to by law, but sometimes the average individual or citizen doesn't understand what all the things we need to do, all the moving parts. And if they come in and they tour, like the sheriff has said, or we put them through some sort of educational or communication is better, I think the community will understand a little bit more what goes on in a jail. And it's not what you're seeing on Orange is the New Black or whatever that TV show is, or all these shows that you see about life in jail settings or prisons. We need to make sure the community knows what's going on in our jails. So the expectation is here. And if it's a little bit, oh, we didn't realize that, then there's meeting in the middle and we work together to say, okay, this is what we need to do. And I think, so we have an inner systemic change, we have an outer systemic change. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do, working with the community and kind of bring in, I had a reporter come in to see our jail, and I think he was shocked at really what the deputies do on a daily basis to try to make that environment work. So that's kind of where I'm coming from in systemic change. And I've seen some great improvement already in just the day-to-day operations. The stats we have with the weapons that we have seized, the searches we have done, the incarcerated persons we have actually been able to help. So I've seen some great progress. I'm very proud of it.
Thank you. That's really encouraging. I just want to double check to make sure, do you have any time limits? Because we have 5 members of the public that still have questions, but we have our board members that also want to ask you questions. Are you all three good?
Just have to make dinner for my family. My son might be upset, but he'll be okay.
I'm good.
And I'm good right now, but I do have another meeting at 7 o'clock.
My son can order pizza.
Chair Delaney, if you don't mind the interruption, this might help speed things up, but I just want to clarify that this is public comment period. It's not a question and answer town hall type of situation. Certainly if members of the public want to raise questions to CLERB, the board members on CLERB could then ask questions of the speakers if they want to pass those along. I just want to remind everyone that it's public comment.
Thank you, counsel. Appreciate that. Okay, that being said, is there any members of the public that would like to make a comment? And then if you have a question, you can forward it to us and we'll forward it to Sheriff's Department or probation, or they can take it directly. Mr. Parker?
Chair Delaney, we have 5 requests to speak thus far.
Okay.
I will turn this over to Yusuf Miller.
Hello, Mr. Miller.
Yes, Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition. And anytime we get to be family focused and saving lives in custody is really amazing and outstanding if we can do that. So my question to the current sheriff, the interim sheriff, you said that 400 people have been saved this year, or whenever that time frame was. I didn't catch it, but where's the data on that so that we can see it? That's something very important. I think we should see when law law enforcement does something as such as save lives, I've been one of the first to come through and say, thank you for doing that. And we appreciate that as a community. So I would like to see the data based on that. We have, as the community, we have the audit that talks about the in custody deaths. So that is some data. We have data for the stop data by the sheriff's department with 3 times higher for people of color. So that's some data. So I would like to see, not that the data doesn't exist. I'm just saying that it would be really consoling to my heart to see that all of these families were avoided this tragedy of loss of life. So I appreciate that. And another thing, kind of caught my attention when the assistant sheriff, she was saying about, the community. I would like to see one of those simulations where people see where cops or sheriffs are pulling their guns and seeing how easy it is or confusing it is, and people may get shot. I wonder if they have a simulation of how it is to get pulled over for people of color 3 times as much as other people. Is there a simulation for being homeless and being over policed? And if there's a simulation for having mental health problems? So I'm sorry, I think I got cut off by an incoming call. But my point is there's more to it than just the community seeing what the life of a deputy or the life of an officer is. It's some other community experiences that make this whole interaction between law enforcement and the community what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Lori Saldana. Ms. Saldana.
Yes, thank you. In terms of comments, I have 2 to make. Sheriff Ray, thank you for meeting with our group back in February. It was startling for me to learn that the newest deputies that have just completed training are assigned to detention facilities. I think when you have the highest death rate in California and you have some of the least experienced people being assigned to the detention responsibilities, that's something systemically has been brought up, needs to be addressed. Is that part of the problem? And so we have very inexperienced people being assigned to work in a jail situation that can be very stressful and increasingly deadly. And the next comment is, please take down the fentanyl video of the deputy collapsing. It has been debunked by many medical experts. There is no toxicology to support what is reported to be happening. It's been a year now since that's been posted online, and it really just promotes a false narrative about how a fentanyl exposure can incapacitate someone in a matter of seconds. It's generally understood that is not the case and that video is misrepresenting what happened. It's still online. Please take it offline. It really reflects very poorly on the department's response to the fentanyl epidemic. It's dangerous, yes, but that video does a real disservice to educating people about the reality of fentanyl overdoses. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Robin Sales.
There we go. Hi. I am on the Behavioral Health Advisory Board from District 3. I'm a licensed clinical social worker who's retired, so I have a specific interest in mental health. I'm not representing the Behavioral Health Advisory Board in my comments. I'm a private citizen. I was very happy when Assistant Sheriff Adams Haidar was promoted to take over the Detention Services Bureau, because I know that she has many years of experience and a liaison to the behavioral health services on the mobile crisis response team. So I know that she has very good information and experience in dealing with mental health issues. And that makes me feel good that there's someone who's has ultimate responsibility, who's looking at the mental health and substance use needs of people in jail. So Ms. Hoffman, I'm sorry that I didn't get in after your comment because I have a question, but I'm just going to say this. If maybe one of the CLERB members could ask that. I wanted to know about the progress in terms of mental health and substance abuse assessments when people on intake. And also for Sheriff Ray, is it being considered that pre-booking or pre-incarceration, that there's an assessment done so that people can be diverted to the correct place for them to get treatment. And thirdly, is to make sure that when people that you are both working with behavioral health services closely and the Alternatives to Incarceration group at Sandag, to make sure that this is a seamless process, so that really there's so many people in jail who don't need to be there. And so if we're talking about saving lives in custody, we're really talking about that intervention before someone is incarcerated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Laura Bojanoff. Laura Bojanoff, if you can unmute.
Let me unmute you. Thank you for the
There.
ability to speak tonight. Tonight, I would like to address an issue that didn't quite as well happen to me in February. I'm just going to take some notes and read them to you if I could find them. I don't have them with me, but in February, I had someone told me that my daughter was in danger in Rancho San Diego. So I went down there. I'm from Spring Valley, and I went down there looking for my daughter, and it turns out I was in the wrong area, that she was not at that place. And so I called the police, and they told me that she wasn't in that area, and for me to leave, and for me to not come back ever again. Kind of very stern and adamant and very mean. And I was just like, well, I don't want to leave this area without my daughter being here. I want my daughter and my grandbaby. And I did not want to leave my child. And so I went to the grocery store. I believe it was in Albertsons. And in the Albertsons, I was just there, parked in the Albertsons. And then a policeman, he came up to the car, and he asked me, was I okay? And I said, no, I'm just waiting for my daughter still. And my daughter's gonna be 22. And then he had told me that I look like someone. And I don't know who he thought I looked like. Then he motioned for me to pull down unzip my pants and pull down my pants. And if I was there, if I could have his partner come. And I just looked at him, and I was just scared. I didn't know what to do. And I just felt like I was like drugged. I just didn't know what to do. And then by that time, I felt as if there were like 6 or 7 officers that came to the car. I felt rubbing, I felt touching, I felt fingerprints all over my body. I felt just all this motioning all over my body that I couldn't talk, I couldn't speak. I felt very hurt. I didn't report it the next day because I'm 51 years old.
Thank you, Ms.
retired.
Bojanoff. Next, we will go to Natalie Nishat.
Thank you. Wow, sorry, just pausing there. That's horrific to hear. The comment I wanted to make was kind of echoing what Yusuf had said around data transparency, given, there's definitely gaps between some of the things we're hearing today about whether it's programs being implemented or attitudes, morale that's being implemented and kind of the results we've been seeing for a long time in terms of conditions for jails. So I would just call for greater data transparency. And I would also be curious to know how the Sheriff's Department is planning to, or is and continue to measure implementations and then share that with the public, as well as how you're using that data to drive your decision-making processes moving forward. I was glad to hear some commentary around bringing humanity into the kind of practices and operations. One thing that I heard that I was definitely not was unfortunate to hear was kind of the, I think, terminology, Sheriff Adams, you had used around war on drugs, and it's specifically the rhetoric that I want to comment on, not the attempts to improve the situation with fentanyl. I'm very glad to see that, but just the rhetoric around war on drugs being the selected terminology, I was unfortunate to hear, just giving the racist connections of that, the terminology, the laws, the momentum around that movement in the 70s and earlier. So just kind of a call for greater data transparency and more specific actions and greater listening to CLERB and the recommendations that they've been providing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nishat. Chair Delaney, I do not see any additional requests to speak online, and I have not received any requests to speak through our electronic portal. I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I see that Bonnie, Board Member Bonnie has a comment, question.
Ms. Kank, you're muted. There you go.
I have two comments and a question. First of all, I want to thank all three of you for being here tonight. This was very, very informative. And my second comment is I really do appreciate hearing the number of families that were helped by saving their loved ones, their incarcerated loved ones. We never hear that other side of it. We only see the side of the death. And so it's very refreshing to hear the other side of it. And I would, as whoever member of the public commented, I would like to see some stats on that as well. My question is, what is being proactively done to reduce the amount of fentanyl and opiates that are entering the prison system to help save lives?
I'm wondering if, don't want to put you on the spot, is it something that you can report back to us?
I can certainly, Teresa and I can both give a quick answer right now. I think that is a great question, and I'm glad you asked that in terms of, and thank you for your comments before your question. In terms of, I want to answer the statistics question real quick, and then I'll talk about the other. Most of the information that we have regarding what I've stated tonight, it's on our public-facing webpage. In fact, our department goes out of our way, but I can meet with Paul Parker. I can have our staff meet with him together. We can provide you all the statistical data to support the things that I said today about the 409 lives that were saved and other issues. And then he can present that back to the CLERB. So all of y'all don't have to spend endless hours trying to search our webpage. But we do have on our public facing webpage, we do have a public information piece where we try to be transparent and put out as much data as we can. In terms of what are we doing to reduce drugs coming into jail, I think in the past year, I've heard that our detentions folks have done a presentation. I would like to do it again. I would like to tour you. I know that we go out of our way to stop in many ways with body scanners, with checking the mail. It's amazing to me when I became a deputy. I've been on the department 31 years. I came on in 1991 and started in the jails. It's amazing to me how creative criminal organizations can be to try to get narcotics into the system where they're much higher priced to the user inside a detention facility than they are on the outside. But I would love to bring back our experts and show you exactly what I've been doing this around town, different groups, on how narcotics come in and everything that we're trying to do, and show you. We show you the photographs, the pictures, the information, and the techniques that we use to stop this. I think that would be much more informative than me just saying, you know, where we're checking the mail, we have new canines. In fact, I'll tell you real quickly, we used to have canines in the jails several years back, and they were trained to sniff narcotics and to do enforcement. And the problem is when we would take them into the jails, because they were enforcement dogs, they would often bite people, and then the searches would be done. Now we have canines in our jail. I think there's 6, correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa, 6, I think that we have, and their job is to sniff. They will come and they will hug you to death, lick you to death, and also smell anything that you have without biting anybody. But they are trained, and they're trained to find all kinds of narcotics. So we take them in to do the searches, because we know we try to prevent narcotics from coming into the jail, but we also have narcotics in the jail, and we have to find that while that's inside there right now. Teresa, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Just we're hitting it from as many angles as we can, and while I can't get into the in-depth investigations that we do have, as the sheriff stated, we do have canine. We have a specific fentanyl canine, and we're training another dog to be fentanyl as well as a poly dog, which is many drugs, not just fentanyl. So we're increasing our canine presence for the sniffing. The body scanners, we use those. They're not perfect. We will see abnormalities. We are getting much better, I think, though, at looking and being more discerning upon intake. If there is an abnormality in a body scan, and working with the law enforcement agencies who are bringing in the incarcerated individual, that if there's something there we're not so sure about, sending them out to be medically evaluated. And we have made a whole system, a new system with paperwork where the medical staff know exactly what we're looking for, instead of just sending these officers and deputies and incarcerated person kind of to the hospital and play this game back and forth, because it's not successful for anyone. But more targeted approach. Okay, this is what we're looking at. This is the abnormality. If nothing comes of that, and we're still certain there might be something in there, working what we call in a dry cell, where the incarcerated person can pass the item that they may be body carrying in a safe environment, allow them the opportunity to relinquish it on their own, so they can do it rather than being forced to go to the hospital. So there's other avenues we can take that way. We are proactive and reactive in our search methods. So reactive when if an incarcerated person is in medical distress and it's an opiate related incident, we know that we're going to have to make sure we search the rest of that module to make sure no other incarcerated person now has possession of that same illicit substance, and in another person going down or worse, dying. So we're doing a reactive search. Proactive would be we have obtained intelligence in some manner, shape, or form, or we've done what we call intelligence-led policing, where we know that there's a probability that there may be some sort of drug in a module or in an intake area, and we'll be proactive in our approach. And once again, we're always balancing our staffing levels with security levels, and also with the search of the individuals to make sure we're doing it in humane environment. And we're following Title 15 and BSCC standards when it comes to searching of individuals, with security, facility, and safety of everyone being foremost in our mind. We have a robust mail program where we're scanning the mail to make sure there have been all kinds of amazing ways how they smuggle it in, and they do it under legal mail. So making sure we're dealing with our legal mail within all the legal ways that we can search it, and making sure it's done in their presence. But you would be shocked to know how much we find in legal mail. We also are working with other agencies in terms of when we know, and with all the new legislation that's come down, the way there's alternatives to incarceration. So a person may be doing a modified time in custody. They may do a weekend, they may do a short stint. They know that they're going in. So oftentimes what we'll see is what they call body carrying. They know they can bring it in because they know they can make a lot more money, or even worse, they're being forced to bring it in because somebody has told them you are going to carry this in, and they have no choice because they're worried about their own safety or the safety of their family. And so we have intel that that's happening. So we work proactively to identify who those individuals might be. And that's where I'll end on that one, because there are investigations, and for the integrity of that, the investigations, I won't go into detail, but we have hit this from so many different angles that, there's always room for improvement. We're always looking at new ways to deal with the illicit substances in our jails, and I'm a 51-year-old woman myself, And, you know, if I use words that are offensive, it's not because I'm meaning to do that. It's just because it's an analogy. So my apologies to anyone I may have offended with my word choice earlier referencing drugs, but I'm a 51-year-old woman too, and sometimes I don't know all the right things to say, the new words. So that's about it on the
Thank you.
what we're doing for
You know, I
drugs.
think we could have this conversation. It could last quite a while. So I would like Mr. Parker to make arrangements for the presentation. If you could, at one of our next meetings. I think I might have seen that, but it's always good to refresh. And I'm sure things have changed since the last time. And we can go into more detail if you'd like, if the board would like, on actually drugs, how they get into the detention centers and all that. Okay, I see that GI, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. My questions are actually for both the sheriff and the assistant sheriff. Would both of you quickly comment on your manning and staffing levels, the sheriff, the overall in the sheriff's department to include deputies and civilian staff, and the assistant sheriff in the detention center? In other words, how many deputies are you short, and is mandatory overtime required of the deputies and the detention personnel? And I have a couple more questions after that.
Sure, Teresa, I'll go ahead and start. So we are, unless of course you want to jump ahead of me.
Go ahead, sir.
I'll go ahead. Good question, sir. Thank you for asking. So we're about 280 deputies short. 130 of those deputies are to staff the new jail, Rock Mountain, that we're expanding on. And we're building a new jail because our jails are aging. And in order to repair George Bailey, we have to move the inmates out of there into another place. And eventually we would like to close South Bay Jail. But to do that, we have to open a new jail, and it needs about 130 people. So out of the 280 deputies, that's 130. We're short about 60 deputies on the law enforcement side and about 220 on the detention side. So if you take away the 130, we're like roughly 90 to 100 deputies short. Normally we lose about, when talking about staffing, 185 to 190 deputies a year out of 2,600, 2,700 is roughly 5% every single year to retirements, what do you call it, resignations, whatever the cause may be. Over the last 2 years, we lost, actually, I would tell you that we were full up until March of 2021. We had a deputy hired for every position we had before we expanded the jail. In this last year, we lost over 300 deputies. We lost basically 110 deputies more than we thought we were going to. And in the exit interviews, the reasons were they were tired of COVID mandates. They were tired of the anti-law enforcement culture. I don't know if you're aware, but our applications in 2021 went down 25% from 2020, which went down from the year before. And this is all of a sudden we went from having many people on a long waiting list to join the sheriff's department to having just people coming through the door and no longer a waiting list. And this is a crisis not only for the sheriff's department, but for all the agencies in San Diego and all the agencies across the country, or the majority of agencies across the country. Law enforcement doesn't seem to be the field that it once was. And I'll tell you what, we had people in 2020 and 2021 drop out of our academies. They were in the academies because they said their family members told them that it was a bad time. You can't do this right now, it's too dangerous. Or if you go through the academy, we won't talk to you anymore, we'll disown you. So people left because of that. We had people that passed our background that were waiting to go into an academy because we run a law enforcement academy 4 times a year, a detention academy 3 times a year. And they quit for the same reasons. And we had people in our background processes that did the same thing. They said, hey, I just can't do this right now. My friends, my family, they want to do that. So we lost people in our process. And then we have reduced numbers of people coming through the department. So we do have a hiring shortage right now. I will say that we're changing what worked in the old days, what worked 10 years ago, going to the colleges, going to the Marine Corps, going to the Navy, were common ways to hire, but now we have to reach people where they are. So we're changing our protocols, our processes. I can tell you over the last 6 months, we've doubled the amount of applicants that have come through the door. And so we're seeing a change, but we're looking probably, if we keep trending in the direction we are right now, probably 15 to 18 months before we become fully staffed. Part of the issue that we have is the mandatory overtime, because we have requirements and we don't have, like I say, if we're 220 deputies short, 60, about 220 in detentions, that's where there's shortages, and people also get sick, and people get to go on vacations and take time off and have children. Now we have a lot of young moms that have children in here, and when the babies are born, they get bonding time. So we have to fill the spot. So we're asking everybody in the department to donate a day every pay period. Teresa can probably give you more detail on this, because many hands make light work, and we want to make sure that we can keep our commitments to the people in the jails, in the courts, in patrol, and still do the critical law enforcement functions. I mean, we're leaving a lot of specialized positions vacant, where you might have an 8-person unit, we have a 5-person unit or a 4-person unit, so that we can get our core functions complete. And the core functions are running our jails, running the patrol responses for the community, making sure the courts run safely, and then the HR and lawful legal functions behind that, and internal affairs, homicide, a few specialized investigations like child abuse, domestic violence. Those have to be done so we can care for the people out there. But right now, hiring is a crisis for us. I see the numbers going up, but it is very difficult. And I'll tell you right now, we're sitting here, all of us, I don't see a mask on anybody right now. I can go through my day. I went through the whole day today, walked through this building, went to the County Operations Center. I live out in the East County. I've been to many restaurants, and nobody's wearing a mask right now. People, even though a lot of people are catching COVID again. I mean, we have about 90 people with COVID. No, not as many people are dying. It doesn't seem to be as dangerous, but people are catching it. But in our jails, people are still wearing masks. They're still wearing protective equipment. They're going to that module every 15, 30, 45, 60 minutes to make sure people are fed, clothed, get their mail, get their cleanliness, get toilet paper, move to courts, get their visits, go to their classes. They're still wearing these things. And when you wear an N95 mask, that is the best, most secure face mask that you can have. After 2 years, it's starting to cause problems with people's noses, with the ears, on the faces, and they're tired. Some folks are just tired of doing that in that area. So we're losing some people that way. But I can tell you, we have, I think it's 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 detentions deputies. We have 1,000 detentions deputies working the line in our jails. So we're short. We still have a lot of people there. And it is commendable that these people show up every day, work hard, do the job that they have to do, because they're under some very difficult conditions right now. And Teresa, whatever you want to add on to that.
Thank you, Sheriff. So for our staffing issues, I won't go into the numbers, the Sheriff already did, but the unique issue about DSB in our jails is that, unlike patrol, when they're down, they can call in the overtime or whatever, but in DSB, we have a set amount that we are allotted through the county. And that number, unfortunately, if an incarcerated person needs to go out to the hospital, or an incarcerated person, like a female might be having a baby, we have to then transport them to the hospital, because despite the fact that we have a medical unit, we are not a hospital in our jails. We don't provide the level of medical care that a hospital will. So we need to make sure we're getting that individual out to the hospital. So at this point in time, like today, I have 12 incarcerated persons out at the hospital for a myriad of different treatments, or they never even were booked into our facility. They were booked into the hospital because they were sick at the time that they were arrested. So that number then is pulled from my current staffing, and they're at the hospitals, and I have to keep making sure we have staffing. And if there's a certain classification level on that incarcerated person, they're a high-end classification, very criminally sophisticated, a threat to society, an escape risk, I have to put 2 deputies on 1 incarcerated person. So that really bites into my staffing to run my day-to-day functions of each facility. In addition, I have the male-female issue. So I have to have a certain percentage of females working at Las Colinas, because there are certain areas and functions that a male deputy cannot do in a female facility. So I have to have X amount of females at any given time at Las Colinas and at Vista, where we do have booking for females. So that's constantly what we're having to look at the numbers and move people, not only incarcerated persons, but deputies, to the different facilities to make sure we're hitting all the areas we need to hit and we're making a safe environment. In addition to that, we're battling the fact that we are still doing cohorting or quarantine for COVID. So in a congregate care environment, which is a jail, every time a new set of incarcerated persons comes into booking, we then put them in a quarantine for 5 days, and they're in one area together for the day that they came in. So just for example, today I have 18 mods within my facilities that are in quarantine for 5 days until they can test out to show they're negative, so they don't impact the rest of my jails and get anybody else sick. Now, while we only have, I think, 36 positive cases in the jail right now, I have almost 1,000 incarcerated persons in some state of quarantine, which means the way we have to let them out for their day room, their rec time, their programming takes more deputies, and the staffing is already short. So those are the kind of things that we're dealing with when it comes to staffing. And the deputies are phenomenal in what they do, but actually they're having to work 2 days of pay period overtime, which is a lot because for those of you that don't know, the deputies work 12.5-hour days, 5 days in a row, 2 days off, then 2 days on, and then 5 days off. So when they're made to work 2 overtime shifts in a pay period, that's a lot. They're ending up with very little time off. And that's just not sustainable. But we've been doing it for the better part of 2 years. So that's where we're at with staffing. Thank you for asking, because it is a big issue.
Thank you. GI, did you have another question?
I'll let somebody, they really covered the landscape. I'll let somebody else ask a question. Yes.
Kim, I think you are next.
I think Ms. Ayub was next. As a matter of fact, I know she was
Oh,
next.
I apologize. Ms. Ayub, did you want to ask a question? I apologize.
That's okay. This question is in regards to your comments, Sheriff Adams. I truly believe in what you said on how difficult it is for others to see a job in which you are trained to fully encompass everything that you deal with. That is why my question is in regards to something that comes up frequently in the stuff that we review, which is mental health reactions and mental health things. The California state only requires 15 hours total of mental health training, which goes to Penal Code 13515.26, which incorporates not just mental illness, but intellectual disability and substance use disorder. It only requires 8 hours every 2 years for update for officers. So my question is, since you are having such an influx of mental health responses and the sheriffs have 2.2 billion versus the 7.2 million that the county commits to mental health services, what is your plan in order to train the officers so they are better equipped to deal with mental health responses? And if there is no plan in place that can be incorporated that will help this, is it fair to ask the county to reallocate part of your funds over to the 7.2 million for mental health services?
So the deputy sheriffs do have mental health training in their academy and through their STC Academy for the deputy sheriffs. We also have the mental health clinicians that are actually physically working in our facilities, and our new medical vendor, NavCare, who we're contracting with, also has mental health clinicians. So they do work in partnership. The deputies are being trained to recognize those signs when an incarcerated person may need more clinical assessment, or there might be something that they need. So that's to the level of what deputies are doing. We also have deputies who specifically seek far more training in terms of jail-based competency and the IST and competent to stand trial group. So we have an entire group of deputies who work specifically at our central jail, who are far better trained than other deputies. That's a special position, and they work hand in hand with mental health clinicians. The mental health clinician has been an elusive position right now. We are vying for them just like HHSA is, just like all the other jails are. And that's kind of the biggest push for us right now, is to hire mental health clinicians. So NavCare is working on that in partnership with us. I don't know when we're going to have a full complement of mental health clinicians. I wish I did know, but that's a common issue across the board. I don't know. To your question of allocation of money, I'm not prepared to answer that right now. I don't think I have enough information to determine where that money needs to go right now.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll go to Mr. Ware.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for all three of our guests for coming on and being on the spot. I mean, that's what we pay you guys to do, and we thank you for being on the spot. Assistant Sheriff Hyder, I mean, we work together in other areas, so I know that you have the courage to make the tough right decision. I know that you have the vision, a great vision, because I've heard it. And my question, because I know you can execute the vision as well, do you have everything you need other than the bodies of the deputies to do what you want to do in your vision? That's number one. Number two, why not use the more experienced deputies in the jails? My understanding is that we have a lot of the new deputies that come into the jail, hence they're making those mistakes as new deputies. And then number three is, as a former probation officer, deputy probation officer in this county, I didn't realize until recently that there were two departments under Sheriff Ray, that is the jails deputies and also the street. Can you share the difference in those organizations? And the last question on that, why not cross-train those two groups so they can back up each other? I'll take your comments off air. I've been waiting to say that all my life.
I'll thank you, Mr. Ware. I appreciate that. I'll start with that. So we have actually 5 bureaus within the sheriff. We have one department. We have 5 bureaus. We have the Detentions Bureau that focuses on detention services. We have the Law Enforcement Services Bureau, the primary function being patrol responses, and then investigations, and then emergency support like that. Von Marston, our Astrea helicopter unit, our emergency planning. The Sheriff's Department is the mutual aid coordinator for the region. So when another local law enforcement agency asks for help, it goes to our Law Enforcement Services Bureau and they coordinate that. We have the Court Services Bureau. Court Services Bureau is charged with making sure that the courts operate safely so that people can have their day in the court, that all the different parties, all the justice partners can operate safely inside there. We have the Management Services Bureau. This is the bureau that deals with our finances. This is where our accountants are, our building maintenance, our mechanics, the people that they run so many pieces, and they run the grants, they run all the administrative functions basically behind the Sheriff's Department. We have 46 total facilities. 27 of those are 724 operations. And then we have the Human Resources Bureau. The Human Resources Bureau, of course, is the personnel, the hiring. It's the payroll division. It's our medical liaison unit that deals with the people that are injured, that are broken, going under retirement, people that have passed away, dealing with the families. It's the wellness program. And then it's also the Internal Affairs Division, where we investigate the folks in there. So we have 5 focuses that we do in this department. But all of our deputies are trained the same way. Virtually, I would say 95% of all of our deputies start in detentions. And we put new deputies in jail. Like, we're going to have an academy graduating very soon. Next month, it'll have 34 deputies. Those deputies will go into the jail. It's important to know that the jail system has half of our department. Half of the department is jail system. So there's over 1,200 deputies that are in the jail right now. When we put these 34 people in, they're not going to be 34 deputies in the same unit by themselves, relying on each other. They're going to be put in a place to be trained. And we have them start in the jails. So they can learn what they're going to do. We rarely put a brand new person in a patrol car in our patrol division, because we don't want to put someone that has maybe 3 months of training into a car by themselves and go to a house and try to determine, is this a domestic violence dispute, or is it just a husband and a wife having an argument over how to spend the money on golf clubs or a dress or a school, college savings, or what it's going to be. We want our person to have a little more experience and knowledge in dealing with people before we put them in a car by themselves to do that area. We put some brand new deputies into the court system. We were doing that for a while, but we realized putting them in the court system, they lose the experience of dealing with people in the jail system or in the patrol system. So we're getting away from putting brand new people in the court system. As you recall, last year we had a shooting. A year and a half ago, we had a deputy shot someone outside of the jail. If you recall that event, that was a less than 1 year deputy that had never worked in the patrol or in the jails. His first assignment was in the court system. The only experience that he had besides running the courts was the court's procedures, and not the law enforcement out in the field or dealing with people in the jail. I can tell you that working in the jail is a tremendous experience in terms of learning, because you talk to people all day long with a training officer, with a partner. In the jails, you always have a partner. In patrol, you work by yourself. So we think it's a better place to start somebody when they have somebody side by side with them, an experienced deputy, to work them through their probation year and the years afterwards. We don't have any solo positions in the jail. Well, there's obviously solo positions, but not when in terms of when you're dealing with the inmates. You're always in there with 2 people at a time working on what's going on, or the incarcerated persons. So it's a good place to start in terms of new people. And we're not filled with new people. We have people with 30 years, 25 years, 20 years, 15 years. We have a lot of experience in our jails. We just start new people there. As I say, 34 people will come in, And people during the course of the year, 30 people will come out in that area. It's just that last year we lost the extra 110. Gosh, did I answer? You had 3 questions. Experience, do you have, oh, Teresa, do you have everything you need?
Sheriff, can I just go back to the
Sure.
The classification? I think it's important to note here that we also have 2 different classifications of deputies. So we have a deputy who's a detentions and courts, which is controlled by what we call STC, standards of training. It's not a post position. And then we have deputy sheriff law enforcement, which is controlled by peace officer standards and training. And deputies that are detentions and courts, they go straight to the jail when they're brand new. And they only go to the jail. And then after some time, they can work in our courts bureau. The law enforcement deputies can either go to the jail or the courts upon graduation from their academy, because it's 2 different academies. And then after a couple of years, they go to patrol. And they can work in all 3 areas, bureaus, whereas a detentions deputy, based on their training, because there's a difference in the training and the difference in the time of the training, can work detentions or courts. So when the question is, why are we putting our junior new deputies in the jail? Well, that's where they go, because they're detentions deputies and they go to jail. That's exactly the job that they have applied for. So they're not there by themselves. They have very tenured training officers and tenured detentions courts deputies who have been in the jail. We have people that have been there 25 years, 20 years, and then you have the younger ones. So it's no different than patrol, where you have very seasoned tenured patrol deputies. You have the younger deputies who went to jail or courts for a couple of years, and then they go out to patrol. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I didn't know if there was a misunderstanding on the types of deputies we have working in our department and why the younger ones or lesser trained ones are going to the jail. That's why. As to Tim's question of, do I have everything I want short of staffing? Well, staffing, if you could tie it up in a bow and give me staffing, that'd be wonderful. We would be rock stars, and I would appreciate that. We are well staffed or well funded department. We have no issues there. We work well with all of our partners. The Board of Supervisors has supported us. I think if there's one thing I could ask, it's an intangible, I guess, it would be, if anybody has questions, just ask. Don't jump to conclusions and don't have certain things in mind that this is the way it is. If there's a question and there's some concern, the sheriff and I and our undersheriff, we're here to help and answer questions, and we're transparent. So rather than just kind of come up with this is how it is, just call us and I'd be happy to answer the questions. I guess I'm asking for you to be a partner. That would be my ask. If I had anything and I could ask you, that's what I ask.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Ms. Pintar?
Sorry, I was having trouble with my mute. Thank you, Assistant Sheriff Adams Hyder. That's actually a perfect segue to my next question or my comment. I joined CLERB, applied to join CLERB because I was really heartbroken at seeing story after story about the deaths in our jails and how our San Diego County was ranking compared to other parts of the state. Having said that, I come to ask you about the deaths in the jails, not from a place of wanting to place blame, but as from a place of what do you think is happening and how can we help you address the problem? I know that back in March, Assistant Sheriff Martinez called for a review of the natural deaths in the jails. I saw that in a press release that was issued from the department, I think back in, maybe she called for it in February and the press release was issued back in March. I wondered if that review has been done yet and what the results were. And I really just am asking in the most genuine way, what do you think, why do you think San Diego is where we are, our jails are where they are in terms of these death cases? And what can we as CLERB members and as community members who care and want to help solve the problem do just to make it stop?
I'm not sure what you're referring to on the review of natural death, so I apologize. I could get back to you on that, and I haven't heard of any finding on that. Sheriff, are you familiar with that?
My answer would be me too. We'll have to ask and
It's in a
find
press
out.
release on the website. It's in a press release on the website.
We'll be looking for that now. That would have been a month before I became the sheriff. I apologize for not knowing that.
I think it was February of last year, she was saying. That's why I'm not familiar with it. So we'll look into it and find out what exactly it is you're referring to. I think for me, having worked in the jail early on as a young deputy, having an incarcerated person die was an anomaly. It didn't ever happen. I never saw an incarcerated person die while I was working the jail. There are a million perfect storms brewing, but at the end of the day, the incarcerated people are our responsibility. And I know that the programs we've put into place, I'm very, very, very optimistic about our MAP program. That's medical assisted treatment. For those of you that aren't familiar with that term, we have already instituted it. We are collecting urinalysis screenings at the time that they are booked into custody. The arresting agencies are working in partnership with our deputies and collecting those specimens on the individual to see what they are using, what their urine is telling us, and getting them on some sort of medication to treat a possible withdrawal. We are now working on our scoring process. And for those of you that are familiar with the acronyms COWS and CWA, COWS is Clinical Opiate Withdrawal Scale, and CWA is Clinical Institute for Withdrawal Assessment regarding alcohol. And so we are instituting those scores to determine what our long-term plan will be for the incarcerated person that's individualized to that person, to that individual, the needs they have while they are in custody, because that first 24 or 72 hours is crucial, because they're now in a facility where they don't have access to whatever substance they may be used to using. I think this is going to really make a huge impact on our facilities, combined with the access to naloxone. We've had naloxone on hand for the better part of 2 years. Now they have access to it within the day rooms and in intake areas. It's posted in those areas. We've had no incarcerated person deploy it based on need yet. We have had people rip it off the wall and use it because they felt that it was going to solve their problems with their, one said he thought it would make him live forever, and one person thought his nose was running, it would help. So, we're putting it in there. We knew that was going to be part of the issue, and we just replace it and put it back up and educate them that this is for when someone's in medical distress. So the MAT, the COWS and CWA program, the naloxone access, and I think most of all these wellness screenings that we're doing to get out of the check the box, but look at that holistic approach to our population, I think is going to do wonders. We've already seen, we've had no, fortunately, deaths related to suicide. So our mental health protocols that we're putting in place are working. Historically, June is always one of those months where we've seen an increase in suicides for whatever reason, I do not know. But we had 0, and that's huge. We're making these leaps and bounds in how we got to the point we're at. I wasn't working the Bureau, but the Bureau is mine, and I'm taking full responsibility for it. And I'm very positive that we're making the right steps. And I know the narrative has constantly been we're the highest in the state. There's different ways of reporting deaths too, and other counties report them differently. And but San Diego County is mine. And I from you guys, the CLERB folks, I guess once again, all I ask from you, what I need to make this work is maybe first your patience as we work through this, and then also your support and your continued, it's good, be curious, ask us questions, hold us accountable. I don't expect anything less. I'm not in this job because it's an easy job. And so that's what I ask of you. And I'm not always going to do it right, and all the deputies are going to do the best job, but sometimes we're going to do a great job. And I guess I'd ask, when we do something great, maybe say we did something great once in a while, because that goes a long way. That's it.
Thank you for your answer. And I'm sorry, Chair Delaney, may I ask one more question, or I will be happy to wait for everyone else to have an opportunity and come back if you would prefer.
If you could, I'd like to just add a little more to that, and then I'm on no time limit, but I know that Tamika has to leave like probably right now.
Yeah, I think she left.
Okay.
She had another meeting.
Mr. Parker actually sent me the press release, so I misunderstood the question you were talking about. I thought you were talking about a review, like a reinvestigation of all of the people that died in our custody. And what it is I have the press release. It says on February 4th, 2022, Acting Sheriff Martinez directed that all in custody deaths, including natural deaths, be reviewed internally by the Sheriff's Department Critical Incident Review Board. She also directed these reviews be made publicly available, which will occur in the near future. Well, that hasn't happened. I know that we're aware of doing these. I think it's getting past the legal language of what we can put out and what we can't put out. But it is our intent as a Sheriff's Department to put the results of our reviews of these deaths onto our public facing webpage. So that hasn't happened yet, but it is something that we're working on. I apologize for misunderstanding the question earlier. And I'm okay with you asking another question.
Maybe I did not ask it very eloquently, but that is what I was referring to. So thank you for letting us know that that is on the way. In terms of what you do well, and to Assistant Sheriff Adams-Hyder comment, we review many cases where, to me, a lot of cases are people are in some sort of a crisis when the sheriffs are called. They are in a mental health crisis. They are under the influence. I personally toured every one of the facilities last month, and I really want to thank all of the deputies that spent their time showing me around and answering my questions. I had a lot. And everyone that I saw at intake during those 2 days, and there was probably 6 or 7 total, all seemed to be in a crisis, under the influence, mental health crisis. Maybe that you could answer this another time, but I would like to know at some point if the Sheriff's Department could come back to us and tell us how you are working with the new mobile crisis response teams. Maybe they're not new, but maybe they've been expanded. And I know there has been some more emphasis on using and partnering with the mobile crisis response teams at the county. But my second question is, in some of the cases we review, I see there's like really wonderful and beautiful examples of de-escalation from the deputies when they are called to the scene and there's someone in distress and things could go one way or the other, right? And we have seen some really great examples of de-escalation. We have also seen some cases that we have reviewed where it's a very straightforward, simple call for assistance, roadside assistance, a neighbor calling for a well check on a neighbor, a minor altercation between 2 people where there's, someone's calling for a citizen's arrest, and then in a very short time period, it escalates into what looks like a pretty disproportionate use of force to me as a layperson reviewing these videos. Again, I know that if I am not in your shoes, I am not in the shoes of these law enforcement officers who have a very difficult job. But I'd like to know if there is a desire for there to be a cultural shift for more de-escalation. You talked about changing attitudes, Sheriff Ray. I would love to hear that you are asking for more de-escalation rather than immediately going to use of force, because some of the body worn camera videos that we've seen are really, really hard to watch.
Thank you for the question. Yes, so de-escalation is one of the permanent trainings. We're not just settling on putting everybody through one time. We're making that part of our regular annual training or biannual training. And last week, we actually met with the district attorney's office so that we can collaborate on improving the regional de-escalation training that we have in our department, in the DA's department, and what we offer to the region and the other people like that. We want to add more, not only de-escalation in terms of arguing, but also noticing and dealing with people that are having mental health care issues, so that we recognize immediately that someone may be yelling, screaming, or doing something, but it's not because they're angry at me, it's because they're having some kind of an issue. So we are absolutely committed to de-escalation. And I see I see story after, well, let me go back and first say, I'm the sheriff. Teresa already said it. We own everything that our people do. I mean, nobody wants a bad deputy around, and nobody hates that more than we in the sheriff department, because one bad act, like you look and see what happened with George Floyd. I think that set the country back 40 years in terms of relations and what was happening. One act by one person and 3 failure to acts by people right next to him caused riots for, you know, several months and millions and millions, if not hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in damage, dead people, injuries, loss of economy, and all kinds of things. It was horrible. So I would like to think that everyone that worked for me was motivated and dedicated and want to do a great job, but I know that we have people that do not. That's why we have an internal affairs division, and that's why we have you, the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, so people have an avenue to address their grievances and then have the investigations, and hopefully we can deal with the people and call the people that should not be in this business out of this business, or exonerate the people that actually did okay. You know, and I see a lot of body worn camera video. I see a lot, because I was in charge of internal affairs for the last 4 years before I became the sheriff. And there are some people that do some bad things, and we don't want them working for us. There are, though, many, I see so many. The de-escalation training is one of the best things we've ever done. And we started a couple of years ago, I think maybe 3 years ago in 2019 in our department. And I see the difference in how a lot of deputies handle a situation. I can think of a story where a lady tried to run over 3 deputies several months ago, and she ran 2 of the cars. All 3 of the deputies in the past may have shot this lady because she tried to run them over, but they didn't. I think of another car. They ended up talking her down, getting a hold of her boyfriend. To talk her down to get her out of the car. I remember a case in the last 6 months where someone had a gun, and he was pointing the gun at the 3 deputies that were behind their cars. And one would stand up and talk to the guy, and when he would point the gun at him, he would duck down, and another one would pop up. It was almost like a whack-a-mole where the people were just moving their heads up and down and up and down, trying to wear this guy. In the end, they wore down the guy who'd said, "I wanted to kill myself, but you guys wouldn't shoot me. I don't understand why you wouldn't shoot me." So de-escalation works, but it also doesn't work. Some people don't do that. I mean, we hire from the human race. We're people, and we do the best we can. We have a very extensive background process. We have a robust training program, but in the end, people make decisions. If they're bad, we have to hold them accountable for them. If they're good, we have to honor them for the things that they did. So we are committed to not only doing de-escalation training, but improving it. And not only de-escalation in a patrol call, but de-escalation in a detention setting, where oftentimes the deputy is not only de-escalating conflict with them and an incarcerated person, but de-escalating a conflict between 2 different incarcerated persons. And then the deputy involves himself, so then it's 3 people. So, and there's just so many different types of de-escalation. We want to make sure that we can train for that. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much. I appreciate hearing that commitment.
Thank you. And now, Pastor Spriggs, I know you've been waiting a long time.
Thank you. Thank you both, Sheriff and Assistant Sheriff, for your service. My question to you is, have you ever gone into the jails, or have you ever gotten into the cars with your sheriffs to ride around with them, to assist them on calls, to, you know, give them a break, say, hey, I got this, you sit in the passenger seat, I'm gonna drive, or go into the jails? And so, you know, service. So that's my question. And how often do you do that?
Let me start.
What's the response that you get from your employees when you do that?
Let me start, Teresa. In the last 3 months, I have not ridden in a patrol car with any of my deputies or visited a jail. I have visited courts and patrol stations. The support is overwhelming. They love seeing their bosses, but I'd like Teresa to talk about what she's doing in our detentions bureau. I will say, though, as an assistant sheriff, as a commander, as a captain, lieutenant, and sergeant, yes, because I've learned that the troops love seeing the bosses when they're inside there. But Teresa, I'd like you to talk about detentions and what you're doing.
Yes, that's definitely how I operate, and I have in every rank and at every bureau I've worked. When I came into detentions, because it had been 25 years since I worked the jail and things are different, I work the middle of the night. I just show up and I take off my stars, because you can't wear those in there because the incarcerated persons act differently. And also deputies who may or may not know me, even though my picture's on the wall. I go in there and I worked intake, which is our receiving area, and I took in the incarcerated persons for booking, and did body scans. I do the checks in the cells, and I've done it at every single jail, and I do it all the time. And my commander, Christina Bavinkoff, who came in, was promoted 2 months ago. She's doing much the same. We came in and we handled the jail at Central Jail for an entire day. So we had a deputy who's dealing with cancer, and he'll be leaving for treatment, and they wanted to have a send-off for him. And so we went and worked so they could have a send-off for him and not worry about doing their checks and everything, and we did them. And so that's how we lead. That's how I believe it should be. It's my style. It doesn't work for everybody. You know, you got to balance I'm here to spy on you and micromanage you with I'm here to help you. So it is that fine balance. And I do have a job I have to do as assistant sheriff where I got to do the other stuff that's not as much fun. But that's what I have been doing, and it is great fun, and it makes you realize, you know, I'm making decisions that are impacting deputies and incarcerated persons every day, and those decisions better be the right ones. And if I can't follow through on what I'm prescribing, then I shouldn't be doing that. So yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good thing, working where you also make policy. Dr. Brown?
Yes, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I want to also say thank you to the sheriff and the assistant sheriff for being here, and hope this is the beginning of many visits by you all to participate in some of our forums. My question to either of you is, when the state did the audit at the time, they said it was 190 deaths, and I was participating, and I asked them how many of those deaths happened in the hospital. And the lady, one of the auditors said over 80 of the 100 and some deaths happened while the people were in the hospital. And for some reason, I thoroughly reviewed this audit because it was important that I clearly understand it. They left off Los Angeles County. And I think they said the reason they left Los Angeles County off the audit was because it was such an outlier. In other words, they don't report the deaths that happen in, if it doesn't happen in the jail, they don't report it. And they had quite a few more deaths than San Diego, but that wasn't reported. I want to ask, are we going to have, are you asking people to, is this a continuous static project to get this information correct? Because I think the truth, the absolute truth about what's going on is important to all of us. That way we can make the decisions that need to be made. Sheriff Ray or Sheriff, Assistant Sheriff Hyder, are you all asking, or are you, I know Mr. Parker brought a person in, a company in, and they did a fantastic job of looking at the deaths, and that their analysis was right on. So are you all, do you just gonna let that, in order to improve on the auditor's report, what are some of the things that you all feel should do? And also, I'd like the fact that you said that you're open, because I do want to know what we could do to help you all at times, and how do we go about doing that. And with that, I will yield back to the chair.
Teresa, I'll start off. So the audit, the audit stated that there is no state requirement for how sheriff's departments have to, there's no standard on how any of the 58 sheriffs have to report jail deaths, whether it doesn't say that if they die in the hospital, you have to count them, or if they die in the hospital, you don't have to count them. We know that we in the San Diego Sheriff's Department count everybody. If they're a prisoner, I mean, we have people that have died that have been in our custody. They're really state prisoners, and they're sent down to us to handle an issue. They get sick, they go into the hospital, and they pass away, and they're state prisoners. They're not county prisoners. We're just housing them. We have people that have never made it into our custody. They're state prisoners, but our deputies from the jails have to cover them. So there are ours, and we count them as people that have died. We have people that have come to our jails, never made it into housing. We've identified that they have a medical issue. They go to a hospital and they die in the hospital, never being in our custody, yes, never being in a housing unit because they were at the screening process determined that they had an issue, dying there. And we count everybody. In our efforts to be transparent, the Sheriff's Department counts everybody, whether they're in our jail, they're being transported, they're in a hospital. And I know that it was 70 or 80, the number of people in the audit that died in the hospital. We count them. Most of the agencies, my understanding is in the state, say that if they're not inside their jail walls, then they don't count them because they didn't die in their custody. So the auditors mentioned that in their analysis, but in their recommendations or findings, they just said that we had the highest, and they did not address the disparity of how numbers were counted in that area. We as a department are trying to not fight with everybody. We just want to do the best we can in our jails. So we've taken the posture of let's do everything we can, make our jails as safe as they are possible. We'll deal with this audit as it comes up. As we have the questions here tonight, we're trying to educate, talk to people, work with people, and do the best we can. Right now, we're short staffed, so our energy is focused on doing the best we can for our operations and our people, both our deputies and the people that are in our custody. And hopefully, as other people examine the reports, like I believe I shared the information with several entities to do their own analysis and study, and we'll let those people do that study. We just want to make our jails as safe as they can. But we know that it doesn't do me any good. It doesn't do my department any good. It doesn't do Teresa any good to argue and fight with the media or other people saying, well, this audit wasn't fair, this wasn't that. We know there were some issues that were raised. I think there were some very good points that were brought up in the audit. I think there were some points that were not good that were brought up in the audit. Our focus, though, is to do the best we can for the people we have right now so that we can move forward and have a good department where it's safe for everybody. Teresa?
No, you said exactly what I was going to say. The energy I would spend trying to correct some inaccuracies here or there is energy that I need to do better. And there are things that we can do better. Everybody can do things better. And that's what we're going to focus on.
Thank you both.
Thank you. All right, we're going to wrap it up with GI. One last question, Gary.
Not a question, a comment. Full disclosure, Tim and I have worked with the assistant sheriff before, go all the way back to the days of our time on the gang commission. If you have a question, ask her. She's straightforward. She's transparent. If she doesn't know, she will tell you. And finally, I am absolutely enthusiastic about her taking over the detention and the jails. We are seeing action. And I just wanted to know that she has my full support and my continued respect for the incredible job that she does, and being very frank and candid and straightforward with the highest degree of integrity with anybody that I have dealt with in the Sheriff's Department.
That's great. Good praise. All right. So I guess I'll give a little disclosure too, if you don't mind. So Teresa, I knew your dad. He was a legend.
Quite a nickel for every time I hear that. I don't be rich. I could retire.
I know, but he would be so proud. You have such integrity and you're doing a great job, and we really appreciate it. And Sheriff, I want to thank you both for taking the time and answering our questions. And you are welcome to come back anytime. And we hope you do come back with that information about fentanyl and drugs in the jail. And Mr. Parker, is there anything that you want to add to this?
No, I think, look, I think the only thing I can add is in no way when I reached out to the sheriff and the assistant sheriff that I think that they would be talking for 1 hour and 40 minutes. I did not. And I will say, I couldn't be more impressed. You know, they're going to be members of the public and members on CLERB and whatnot that, you know, obviously we're not going to agree with everything that's been said. However, I think that this is the first time that I've seen in my tenure as the executive officer a willingness to stand in the breach, take the heat, so to speak, answer the tough questions. I cannot recall this level of transparency and commitment to communicate with the public, and I think that's important for us to note. I do believe CLERB is not adversarial with the department, just as we're not adversarial with our complainants or the public. I believe that we are collaborative as best as possible with the end goal of having the sheriff's department assisting them in providing the best possible service to the community and persons under their care, custody, and control. So with that, I look forward as the executive officer to continue to help the department do so. I believe that these two folks that we have on the call tonight are absolutely willing to work with us on that, even though they may not agree with every policy recommendation, and we'll put that in our annual report. But again, I cannot thank them enough for taking the time tonight to be as transparent as possible and to answer any of the concerns and questions. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. And I hope your kids enjoy the pizza and tell them we're really sorry that it's another night without a home cooked meal.
They're used to that.
Thank you both. Oh, Sheriff, did you have your hand up? Did you?
Madam Chair, Madam Chair.
Yes, but I'll wait for Gary.
Madam Chair, could we ask the sheriff to come back and discuss the officer involved shooting MOU? I'd like to ask some questions about that. I know some of our constituents, some of the people we represent have questions about it. So I'd just like to know if that would be possible.
It's good with me. Mr. Parker, can you make arrangements for that? Maybe when you come back, we can do the report on the jail drugs and then also switch over to that.
I will definitely do that. I'm also going to be, just to recap, I'll be reaching out for the statistical data reference, the 400 lives saved that a member of the public had talked about and the sheriff has talked about.
Wonderful.
Also the Detention Bureau drug interdiction policies, and also what Mr. Wilson had just mentioned. And also, quite frankly, I will also follow up in reference to the comments made by Ms. Pintar in reference to that, the natural death reporting out.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, much appreciated. Have a good evening.
Ma'am, may I?
Oh, of course. Who is that?
This is Tony Ray, the sheriff.
Oh, hi. Hi, Sheriff.
Hi, two things. One, I apologize for the sheriff's department taking up all of the air and y'all not getting a chance to ask Tamika Nelson a number of questions. I'm sure she's grateful, but I apologize for taking up all that time. Number two, there was in the public comment, there was a question somebody was raising about an assault that probably needs to be reported like right now. If that person is here, I get a hold of Mr. Parker afterwards and see if we can get her to report whatever was happening, because I think she ran out of time and didn't get finished that. But if there nothing happened, that needs to be dealt with like right now.
Thank you. Thank you for remembering that.
Thank you,
Mr.
Sheriff
Parker.
Ray.
You'll get in touch.
I will, and I believe that has been reported, but Sheriff Ray, we will talk more at a later time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, that was so informative and really appreciated it. Okay, we're going to go on now to executive officers report.
Thank you, Chair Delaney. Are you there? Can anybody hear me?
You're good.
All right, thank you. On June 22nd, July 6th, I attended the Commission on Police Practices CLERB collaboration meeting. That was our second and third. Chair Delaney attended the one on June 22nd. This is going to be a monthly meeting to discuss civilian oversight in the San Diego County region. On June 27th and June 30th at 6 in the morning, I provided a brief overview of CLERB for deputies at the San Marcos station, the graveyard deputies and the day shift deputies. On June 27th, I presented an overview of CLERB to the San Diego Police Officers Association, Deputy Sheriff's Association, Deputy Probation Officers Association, and District Attorney Investigators Association executive team meeting. On June 28th, I attended the San Diego County Board of Supervisors meeting, during which 2022-2023 budget was adopted, which has resulted in a new Administrative Analyst 2 position for CLERB. We are in the process of interviewing for that position, candidates for that position this week and next week. Over the past week, several special investigator interviews have been conducted, and 3 candidates have thus far been scheduled for second interviews that will occur on Thursday. As far as the investigative workload, which is attachment B, there are 12 new cases as compared to 10 for June of last year. There are 12 cases on tonight's agenda. At the end of June, there were 88 active cases. There were 28 open death cases, CLERB had documents for 14 and was awaiting documents on the other 14. There is one death case, investigation case on tonight's agenda. There was one new San Diego Sheriff's Department death case in June, and that occurred in patrol services. That was in reference to a motor vehicle accident that had occurred. So we don't have much further information on that yet. We'll wait to get the reports, obviously, from medical examiner's office and the sheriff's investigation. There were 15 open uses of force resulting in great bodily injury without complaint, and 3 of those were reported in June. We have 3 open discharges of firearms without a complaint case and no open uses of force at a protest or First Amendment protected event. As far as attachment C, which is your case progress and status report, as you can see, progress is being made by our investigators unlike any time in the past. If you look specifically on pages 4 through 6, you'll see that those cases are listed by their POBAR, their Peace Officer Bill of Rights due date, and you can see that the top 5 from here till the end of September are on tonight's agenda, of course, and you'll see spread throughout. Our investigators are working the caseloads as they should be. They're prioritizing the cases. We're at that point where we prioritize the cases, deaths and great bodily injury and excessive force cases first, and then other cases of lower complexity, or I'm sorry, lower priority second. But if we can get those cases investigated as well in the interim, you're seeing that happen as well, where there's actually caseloads being worked, not just one case at a time. So that's very good news for us, we believe. As far as the attachment D, I did not send any correspondence to the full CLERB, so there is no attachment D at this point. As far as attachment E, I sent this out to our public distribution list, and the whole point of this is a topic that's caused us great problems in the past. It's caused a lot of confusion in that staff make recommendations to the CLERB members. And we have been publicizing these recommended findings, right? These recommended findings, these recommended rationales. And ultimately, what would happen is that would be laid out to the complainant, to the deputies and probation officers, to the media, and to the public. But then the CLERB would discuss the case in closed session and change the finding as is their right, because quite frankly, it doesn't matter what staff recommends. The only thing that matters in the rules and regulations and CLERB as this whole process is the final board finding. So then when we put something else out, oftentimes there were already media articles saying one thing, and then the board would change its mind, which it never did change its mind. It came to a conclusion. It never reconsidered the case. It was simply looking at the case for the first time, but the finding was different. So because of that, I've decided that, and again, we are committed to transparency. I think our time here over the last year and a half has proven that. However, I also am committed to not providing confusion and causing just a lot of misinformation to be spread. So as of July 1st, our agendas will contain the allegations that will be discussed in closed session. The hearing notices to complainants and to deputies and probation officers will contain the allegations that are going to be discussed in closed session. The week of the meeting and the days following the meeting, by that Friday, the final notices will be sent to every complainant and every subject officer that include what the board's finding was. Again, that's really the only thing that matters. In our final findings report, that will be listed as well, which we put on our website and sent to the San Diego County Clerk of the Board. So that is the reason for that change. Pretty much, I have nothing more to say about that. As far as policy recommendations, pending response, we have still 6, 4 from the Sheriff's Department, and then 2 from the Probation Department. And I know I've talked to our liaisons from the Sheriff's Department and Probation Department, and these are being actively worked, and I anticipate responses over the next month or 2 on all of these. And some of these are very complicated topics, but I'm looking forward to seeing the results of our policy recommendations. We have no policy recommendation responses or sustained finding responses to present tonight, and that concludes my executive officer report.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
I see none.
Okay.
And I did not receive any electronically.
Okay. Any board comments? Okay. Then we will move on. Board chair's report. So I'd like to introduce our new vice chair, Mary Ann Pintar. and our returning secretary, Pastor Spriggs. Welcome. I look forward to working with you. I'd like to thank members of the public for attending our meetings and offering their comments and suggestions. We do take those seriously. And a big thank you to CLERB board members, executive officer, investigators, staff, and our sheriffs and probation liaisons for your commitment to the citizens and the residents of County of San Diego. Now we will go to new business. Continuance of teleconferencing meeting option pursuant to government code section. Council, could you read the motion, please?
Sure. The appropriate motion to continue teleconferencing would be to find that that CLERB has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency and that state and local officials continue to recommend measures to promote social distancing.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to continue? GI motion. Do we have a second? Dr. Brown? Oh, we have a third. Dr. Spriggs? I mean, I've given you the doctorate now too. Pastor Spriggs. All right. Is there any discussion? Pastor Spriggs, could you do roll call for the vote, please?
Okay, I got you off mute now. Okay, Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Dr. Arlie Brown,
Yes.
okay. Nadia Keen Ayub,
Yes.
thank you. Bonnie Kink,
No.
okay. Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
okay. Tim Ware,
Yes.
G.I. Wilson,
Yes.
okay. And Miss Federico is out of town.
Yeah, she's done.
Okay,
Okay.
gotcha.
Thank you. Motion carries. So we will meet again in August virtually on Zoom. B is amendment to CLERB regular meeting schedule, and I'll let Mr. Parker explain that.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Delaney. Because of the length of the Board of Supervisors meetings, it is when we do go back to, because eventually we're going to go back to in-person meetings. As everyone knows, we had those meetings on the second Tuesday of every month. And our rules and regulations stipulate that those meetings shall occur at the County Administration Center. It doesn't say what day, or at a location deemed appropriate by the board chair. At this time, because of the length of the Board of Supervisor meetings, the room that we were using on those second Tuesdays of the month is used as the overflow room. And there is the thought that that room will no longer be available on Tuesday evenings when we have our meetings. So I've reached out to county staff to determine what are the options. So here are the options. And what I'm putting forward to you folks, and I'll let the chair take it from there after I give you the options, is for you folks to vote on what you'd like us to do. So at the CAC, which is down on Pacific Highway, Mondays and Thursdays at 5:30 are available. We must remember that for our meetings, we contract basically with the Sheriff's Department to provide security. They have a full complement, and they have the X-ray machines and whatnot. They have to staff the entrances to the CAC. And so there are deputies that are needed to be there, that are required to be there, and that we pay for on a contract basis to ensure the safety of our members and the public. So Thursday works better for the Sheriff's Department at the CAC, just for staffing purposes. And Monday is just not the best possible day, but they would make it work, do whatever we need. So that's option one, CAC, Monday or Thursday, with security being a better option for Thursday. Number two, the County Operations Center, which is located in Kearny Mesa, is an option. At this time, there are no true restrictions on the on the day of the week that one can meet at the COC. The issue with the COC is that there is, the Sheriff's Department at this time is not housed up there. There is no scanner, no X-ray machine up there. And so the option would be to obviously contract with the Sheriff's Department without, at this time, a scanning device, or move forward with Allied Security, which is up there, which provides the security up there. But if there were any obviously any concerns, security concerns, you would simply have to call 911, and the San Diego Police Department will respond for that if we do not move forward with the Sheriff's Department providing security up there. So with that, Chair Delaney, the options are the CAC, Monday or Thursday. Thursday is better for security. The COC, any day of the week at this point, so Tuesday would continue to be open. The Sheriff's Department's not housed there. They would make it work, but there is no security, there is no scanning device up there. And if you choose not to go with the Sheriff's Department, Allied Security would be an option, but you'd have to call 911 and request San Diego PD. Those are your options. Chair Delaney, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. All right, so you heard Paul. We did have some previous meetings at the COC. It is easier to get to at that time of night. So I'm going to open it up and let's have a discussion about this. GI?
I have a question. Is the time set by ordinance? Does it always have to be at 17:30? And have any of the facilities in North County been considered?
Mr. Parker, you want to?
Sure. To my knowledge, and of course, Ms. Hoffman will let me know if I'm out of line here, but no, there's no time set by the rules and regulations. Now, at one point, there were documentations, I believe it was on a fact sheet that was that's created for CLERB, that our meetings would be held on Tuesday at 5:30. But the only thing in the rules and regulations is that the meetings shall be held at the County Administration Center or at any other public places designated by the chair. And to your question, no, there were no other facilities located. I would simply, as the executive officer, I would like to just say that I do believe, although I may be out of line, I hope that the board considers what is best for the public, not what is best for the CLERB members. Best for the public with the choosing of the location. And that's just my 2 cents for what it's worth. Thank you.
Mr. Parker, so there were no North County locations considered?
I certainly did not consider any North County location, any North County facility. That is correct.
Okay.
Now, I will also say, if I may, that in the past, I want to make sure that the board understands this as well. In the past, we've had community meetings, and we have done meetings in Carlsbad, in Vista, in Encinitas, Solana Beach. I clearly remember back years and years ago doing those meetings. So if the concern is that we're not in the community in North County, it's always the option to have one of our monthly meetings at a council chamber or at a location in North County or East County or South Bay, wherever CLERB decides to go.
I think of the 2 locations, I would think that the Kearney Mesa location would be easier for the public. That's just my perspective. Oh, Mr. Ware, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand up.
I think what's best for the public is for us to meet at the Rubio's in Kearney Mesa. How about that?
Yeah, perfect. You buying? Now, did you have another comment, or did you just say that because
no, I thought
7:30 and we're all hungry?
No, I agree with Mr. Wilson. And in the past, if we had options to have the meetings in North County, I would like to explore that.
Okay. Dr. Brown?
I tend to I think safety should be a consideration, and it's just my feeling. And so, the Thursday afternoon, I would hope we could do that if we could could all agree on a place. I think the temperature for right now for law enforcement related business or indirect business right now, I think is still not as safe as some people might think it should be. That's just my personal opinion.
Thank you. Ms. Pintar?
I feel that the COC, the Kearney Mesa location, is probably easier for the public to access at that time of day than the downtown location, is my feeling. And if we could, I know that, I think the downside that Mr. Parker said is there's not the scanning device, the kind that you get at the county administration building that you walk through, correct? But would it be possible to have the wand type scanners at those locations with the sheriff's deputies providing security?
I am Vice Chair Pintar. I will definitely research any option. I think, the Sheriff's Department has been very, very good about doing everything it can to ensure that the meetings are conducted safely. So I will reach out to them if you folks decide to move forward with the COC. I think that the X-ray machines, I think, are being pursued. They just are not available yet, and I don't know when that will happen, but I'll reach out to them to see if there's any way that wanding capability could occur. I'm sure it would.
Does anybody remember the meeting that we went, the meetings, so more than one, that we had in those chambers? I know that the County Planning Commission meets there. And for some reason, I thought there was something we walked through or other people were scanned. Sherry, do you remember that at all, Council?
I do. It may have been when the CAC was being remodeled, and so the chambers were not available. And I think at that time they actually, I don't know if they moved or they placed X-ray machines at the scanners for the Board of Supervisors meetings.
Oh, that's okay. Bonnie, hang on, GI, I'm gonna get Bonnie and then I'll get back to you. Ms. King, sorry.
As much as I love that county administration building, I just want to say, when I was on CRB, we had our meetings at libraries, wherever San Diego, the city of San Diego was located in. And so any library that had a community room, that's where we had our meetings. And it changed. And it could have been in Rancho Bernardo, it could have been in, East San Diego. But it was always at a different place that accommodated the community. And that's why CRB did that, because it accommodated the community. It's just what my experience.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I do not think that 5:30 in the afternoon in San Diego or near San Diego is conducive to getting the public attended. I mean, many are still at work. Some have to go home from work, find care for the children, get back in heavy traffic. So, my basic concern is that I don't think the 5:30 or 17:30 time in the afternoon is at all conducive to increasing or maintaining the public attendance that we've been getting recently with all the Zoom.
Ms. Pintar?
I was just going to comment that I'm whatever the committee as a whole decides, I'm happy to do. I wonder if moving it around from place to place becomes confusing and people don't know where to find us. Well, I hear what Bonnie is saying about, making it accessible to community. I want to do whatever makes it accessible and whatever people are most comfortable with, but I do think that moving it around from month to month makes it hard for people to know where to find us. That's all. And I don't know I'd like to know, GI, what time you think would be better.
Council, did you have, before we get to GI, Sherry had a comment.
I just want to add to Vice Chair Pintar's comment. The Brown Act actually requires that your board set the time and place for regular meetings by official action. So the moving around month to month, I think would be burdensome. You'd have to be essentially changing your regular meeting schedule at every meeting.
Okay, thank you. Jay?
My experience on the gang commission, and probably Tim will remember this, is that we actually altered the meetings at night to be at 6:30 or 18:30, sometimes 7 o'clock. And that allowed people to get home, take care of the children, grab a bite to eat, and show up. We were having meetings at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and nobody was showing up. So, you know, it's awfully early in the evening for working people, especially when they have to drive, say, from North County. To make a 5:30 meeting for me, I have to leave between 3 and 3:30 to ensure I get there on time from North County.
And if it was at the COC, you probably wouldn't have to leave that early. I think I'm kind of leaning towards the COC as long as we can find a way to get either the wands or the machine, X-ray machines, as Dr. Brown had mentioned. It is a time these days when you want to be cautious. We have, are there public comments? Are there any public comments?
Yes, there is.
Before we continue?
Yes, there is one public comment. Would you like me to go to that?
Please.
Mr. Miller.
Hello, everyone. Yusef Miller again. When it comes to meeting, it's really important that this hybrid is entertained, because it's been an explosion of enfranchisement with the community, especially people who live far away, like was mentioned before, and the differently abled people needing to get to places from having access to or rides to places. So please consider the hybrid option, just like the Board of Supervisors, they do in person and online at the same time. So I think that'll help with some of our attendance and the ability to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I think what we're talking about is when the state of emergency ends. It would be wonderful to be able to have to continue to have hybrid. I just don't know if legally we would be allowed to do that.
Chair Delaney, we will have hybrid. That's the whole
we
point
will.
That's what I'm going to push for. But keep in mind that wherever we go to have the hybrid, which the COC and CAC would make happen, any other location, we'd have to make sure our wireless capability was sufficient to ensure that we could do both from any other remote location. Okay.
That's terrific. Thank you. That's wonderful. Ms. Kang?
To Ms. Hoffman's comment, CRB was also subjected to the Brown Act. And as long as the meeting was posted on our website, the public meetings, we always had people attending. And it didn't matter where it was. We had them at, like I said, we had them at different libraries, and that's what we did, was at different libraries. And I think, to Mr. Wilson's suggestion, I think our meeting started at 6:30. I can't remember, to be honest with you, because it was old. It was a long time ago and I'm old, but they were always well attended.
Ms. King, I think council, correct me if I'm incorrect, was referring to our bylaws and our regulations on how we know.
She referred to the Brown Act.
I'm just reading from the Brown Act. It's section 54954A. It says each legislative body of a local agency shall provide by ordinance, resolution, bylaws, or by whatever other rules require the time and place for holding regular meetings. It does have an exception for advisory committees.
Okay.
CLERB is a bit of a hybrid in that sense. We can look into that.
Okay. Well, at this point, we can always readjust, but Mr. Parker, do we need to just decide that now, or is that just something you need so that you can start planning?
It would be nice if you folks decide it now, because
Okay.
we don't know when this is going to be required. It may be as soon as, who knows, right? So
Yeah.
we're going to need to work with county staff to make this happen.
So that being the case, we have two options right now. We have Thursday. Yeah. Did I hear something? No, okay. Thursday.
Yeah, I actually wasn't finished.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bonnie.
That's okay. I would move that we do the Thursday. I think that would be best if we have to be stationary. Thursday would be best at Overland, right?
No, Overland is Kearney Mesa. And that would be, that'd be the COC. Are you talking about the one downtown, or are you talking about the one in Kearney Mesa?
Oh, Kearney Mesa would be whatever day.
Right.
The one downtown would be Thursday or Monday.
Right.
Okay. I remove my motion.
Okay. Ms. Kina, you?
Not that I'm a huge portion of this, but I can't do Thursday at all. I have a prior commitment. I have other boards that I sit on, so I would have to step down if we moved it to Thursday.
Okay. And I can't do Monday. There we go. All right. That being said, as chair, can I make a motion? I'd like to make a motion that we have our meetings at the COC in Kearney Mesa, subject to being able to either have a wand or an X-ray machine, walkthrough machine for our safety.
I'll second.
I haven't, thank you, Bonnie. I haven't, I suppose we could continue on Tuesday evenings. Should I'll add that to on Tuesday evenings at the COC. Do I still have your second, Bonnie?
Yes, you have my second.
Any discussion?
Chair Delaney, what time are you proposing a different time as well in your motion, or no?
I haven't, can we do that as a second motion, or do you want to do this with us now?
No, it's whatever you folks decide. Thank you. I just want to make sure that wasn't overlooked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's finish this one and then we can get on to the time. All right, any note of discussion? Pastor Spriggs, could you roll call for the vote, please?
Sorry. Okay.
Excuse me, I want to make sure I clearly understand what we're voting for, that we're going to have the meeting. Could we just
You want me to repeat the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so my motion is that we have our meetings at the County Operations Center in Kearney Mesa, subject to being able to either have a wand or an X-ray machine that we walk through for protection.
And is the sheriff who will be providing security for that location?
At this point, the sheriff.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Pastor Spriggs?
Okay. Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Dr. R. Lee Brown,
Yes.
Nadia Keen Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie King,
Yes.
Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
G.I. Wilson,
Yes.
and Tim Ware.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion carries. All right, now timing. First, I'd like to ask Mr. Parker, as far as you and staff, I want to make sure that you can accommodate different times.
Well, look, I think what's best for the public will be best for staff. So right now we'll do everything we can to be there. Obviously, we wouldn't want it too late. In reference to what Mr. Wilson was mentioning like 19 or 7:30 or, I think that would be a little late for our staff because all of them now have to travel up there. So
Right.
whatever you folks make happen, we will accommodate, of course.
Ms. Pintar?
Ms. Hoffman, is there any reason why CLERB members can't participate virtually if it is a hybrid meeting?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to clarify that actually from earlier. So what if once the state of emergency ends or CLERB no longer makes those findings to allow for teleconferencing, CLERB members would still have to meet in person. The hybrid option would apply only to public speakers who could call in virtually.
Even if there was extenuating circumstances, a risk of infection?
Yeah, I should add, so as the Brown Act is currently written, there are some bills in the legislature right now, so that could change. But there are provisions to allow for teleconferencing under the Brown Act, but outside the state of emergency, that means that every location that someone is calling in from would need to be accessible to the public for public comment.
Okay,
You have
so
to post it too.
well, then as to timing, if it is a hybrid, I think that members of the public are able to, tune in from wherever they are at the 5:30 time. I would not recommend starting any later than 6 p.m. And I think that 5:30 is probably the right time because, as you know, we have gone until 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And I think that, I'm looking at the participants right now, and we've gone from 32 to 10 as the time gets later. So in terms of access to the public, I think if we go too much later, that we will lose participants, is my opinion.
Any other comments? GI?
No, we should give different times a try. Why don't we try 6 o'clock? If we see that we're getting a lot of attendance from the public with the hybrid thing, then we can go back to 5:30, or we, just give it some consideration to see what happens, how it works with the hybrid. If we continue to have great attendance by the public with the hybrid, then we can probably stay with what we've got. But I think we ought to just consider it and keep it open. And I think the hybrid will be absolutely essential to having the public fully engaged with what we do.
Okay. So we have 5 or 6. Excuse me, 5:30 or 6. I need a motion from somebody.
So move.
Which time?
6.
I second it.
I'll second.
Fight over who seconds it. All right. We have a motion to, Dr. Brown, is this something that you want to try, or I guess we can figure that out at a later time.
Whatever the group prefers. I'm just making the motion.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
motion to change our time to 6 o'clock, seconded by Pastor Spriggs, along with G.I. Wilson and Bonnie King. Any discussion? All those sorry, Pastor Spriggs, can you?
Do the vote? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Eileen Delaney?
Okay, yes.
Okay. Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Dr. R. Lee Brown?
Yes.
Nadia Keen Ayub?
Yes.
Thank you. Bonnie King?
Yes.
Marianne Pintar?
Yes.
Tim Ware?
Yes.
And G.I. Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you. That completes the vote.
Okay, so we will be meeting when we come back in person. We will be meeting at the County Operations Center at 6 p.m. Okay. Okay, unfinished business.
Chair Delaney,
Yes.
Ms. Hoffman has a comment.
Oh, yes.
I just want to clarify, the 6 p.m. begins only when we begin meeting in person, or 6 p.m. begins with the next virtual meeting?
Oh, my understanding was when we go to the in-person.
Yes.
So 5:30 until, okay, thank you.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, unfinished business, update, report back on feasibility of third-party jail administration. Mr. Parker?
Thank you, Chair Delaney. At this point, we look to have, we have been currently working with County Council and County staff to research this issue of the third party coming in to provide administration, or basically to run the jails, as has been suggested. We are working with County Council and staff, and we look to have this report back at the August meeting.
Thank you. Okay, update on the authority for the executive officer to work with county staff to pursue legislation and or add policy to the county legislative program in support of increased transparency and civilian oversight of peace officers and custodial officers. Mr. Parker?
At this point, the Assembly bill is still, has not been approved yet. That would increase the transparency and civilian oversight. We'll wait to see. That's really the next update that I can give you, is when or if that bill is approved or not. So that's my update on that.
Thank you. And number C, and I'm reading this for the benefit of those in the public that might not have an agenda. Update authority for the executive officer to work with county staff to request that the County Board of Supervisors expand CLERB's jurisdiction to include personnel involved in providing medical care in county detention facilities. Mr. Parker?
This topic is gaining traction as far as the work that is being done on it. I had a very productive meeting again today with County Council. We've had several productive meetings over the last couple of months in reference to this topic. We look forward to moving forward with this, having some progress. Hopefully that I'll be able to report back on very soon.
Thank you.
Something substantial. Yes.
Okay. Number 9, board member comments. Does anyone have any comments that they want to make? Okay. Number 10 is sheriff and probation liaison queries. Anybody have any questions for our probation liaisons or sheriff's liaisons? And thank you all for staying late. We appreciate it. No? Okay. At this point, Council, can you read us into closed session? But let's take a 10-minute break. Do we need 15 minutes maybe to grab some food, or are we good at 10?
I prefer 10, but I'll do whatever everyone prefers.
Okay, we'll do 10 minutes then.
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, this board will convene into closed session to consider items 11A and 11B on tonight's agenda.
Thank you.